Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Peter Jennings. I go by CSURAM88 across the daily fantasy industry, and stoked to be back at FantasyLabs doing another lineup review, this time for Week 8 of the 2017 NFL season. Pretty good week overall. Did have a lot of exposure and game stacks of the Seattle Texans game, which bailed me out in GPPs, and had pretty average teams overall across the industry in cash games. We're going to take a look here at some DraftKings contests. Wanted to review some things here and take a look at my thought process, as well as analyze and kind of look at some of the other top players' teams across the industry. So taking a look here, the Three Donkeys by Bales contest. Taking a look at my team first, I went with Dalton, who was 100% owned here. I thought Dalton was a clear-cut play on DraftKings with a matchup against the Colts. Went with Ingram and McCoy, who are two staples across the industry. McCoy came through in a big way, especially since he got a long touchdown at the end. Really was a critical piece to doing well overall in Week 8. Ingram was a chalky play as well. Then receiver was really tough. I wanted to jam in A.J. Green, so I needed some other cheap options. I went with Ted Ginn and John Ross. Ross, obviously, with a bagel. First-round pick who set the record at the 40... He set the record for the 40-yard dash in the NFL Combine, ran a 4.22. I thought it was a decent spot to try to get him in at 3,200, given that he was supposed to see a lot of snaps. I loved Andy Dalton, and you can see here I have four Bengals: Dalton, A.J. Green, Ross, and Mixon. And I was just trying to leverage the opportunity the Bengals were going to have against this Colts defense, which has been putrid, especially against the pass. So Ross was probably a little thin. I had some teams with LaFell. We'll kind of look through a lot of things. Didn't hate the process. Mixon was heavily owned. Went with Patriots defense for cheap. And then Jimmy Graham, who had across the industry, who was fortunate to catch a second touchdown late in the Seattle game. Bales went with a very similar team, except he went with Christian McCaffrey, who I liked a lot in DraftKings, given his catching upside. Doug Baldwin, Tyler Kroft, T.Y. Hilton, and the Falcons D. Really sharp team overall. I thought that all these plays were certainly in consideration. T.Y. Hilton, I prefer taking him at home. Did have a cheap price tag of $5,600, but still a tough matchup going into Cincinnati. I still had some exposure to him, but I thought it was tough. Pierre Garçon, I also liked, given the situation. Weather was a huge factor here in Week 8. And, Garçon, I believe came out of the game at the end and really had a nice prop and could have done well overall, but just didn't get there. Levitan squeaked me out by 1 point. Dalton, Ingram, McCoy, same combo. Baldwin, Garçon, Jackson, Kroft, Mixon, and Cowboys D. Cowboys defense at the end got him there. Like the thought process overall, we have a lot of similar teams here. Did go to Deshaun Jackson, who I got off of across the board kind of with the wind in this spot in Tampa Bay. I did think he was a pretty good play overall in DraftKings. Congrats to Levitan for shipping the three-man on the Three Donkeys. You can see here all of us had a similar thought process, all the same running backs, especially Levitan and I, and the issue is really just trying to figure out the receivers. Going to the 50-50, the same team or a little bit different. I went with Marquise Goodwin here with Ted Ginn. You can see a very similar build overall. Went with Kamara over Ingram. And was it fortunate to cash just barely here, 19th out of 40, and just wanted to show you guys kind of the cash lines here across the board in high stakes. We'll take a look here at the winning team. Wilson, Kamara, Mixon, Evans, Ginn, Sanu, Doyle, who went ham, McCoy, and Buccaneers. So solid team overall, some stuff off the broken path, but A.E. Jones, the guy I really respect, thought his team was really sharp. Went with Sanu, who caught that touchdown. Mixon, Kroft, A.J. Green, Ginn, Ingram, McCoy. So very similar team. You can see here that Andy Dalton was 55%. If you look at my team, everyone was heavily owned. Marquise Goodwin, I saw a lot of sharps on, just bricked as well for San Francisco, but a lot of guys ended up being very chalky: McCoy, Mixon, Dalton, etc. So that was that team. Then we go to the Thunderdome. We'll look at Chipotle Addict's team here in a second. We'll take a look at my team. Very similar to what I showed before, but I did go with Amari Cooper, my guy. I also went with Jack Doyle to run it back, which worked out in a big way, with John Ross, who bricked, but felt really good about the process here with this team. I thought Kamara was a good pivot away from Ingram and GPPs, given the price discount. And really kind of went with a chalkier team overall. Probably shouldn't have gone Dalton in this spot, but I did feel pretty good about my process overall with this team. Doyle really came through, and if Ross has a big game, I'm in great shape there. All right, so taking a look here at the Grand Festival, the 1500. This is my best team here with Russell Wilson, Kamara, Mixon, Cooper, Fuller, who had a huge game, Pierre Garçon, Jimmy Graham, and Doug Baldwin. Had a couple misses in this team, but overall, really good thought process, I think, with Wilson, Jimmy Graham, Baldwin running it back with Fuller, and then getting in some of my favorite plays amongst some cash game guys and getting a little bit of leverage going Kamara instead of Ingram. Had another team here with Cam Newton that worked out because of Jack Doyle. My worst team was a Breeze stack. Zach Miller had that gruesome injury where it looked like it was a touchdown. Didn't work out. And I just didn't have the running backs here to really get it going with this team. Taking a look at the win team, two-gun, a legend in the industry. Went with a full game stack here. Wilson, Baldwin, Hopkins, Richardson. Had Doyle in here. Was able to take it down with 225 with a 0. Just an incredible team. Ingram and McCoy obviously chalk, but Hopkins is really the key at 4.5%, and then Paul Richardson. Really good team overall. I wanted to review real quickly before I forget the Thunderdome winning team by Chipotle Addict, who had an incredible weekend, just so strong overall. You look around the industry, was on top of the leaderboard, just shipped so many things. Wilson, Howard, McCaffrey, got Hopkins at 4%, Lockett, Richardson, Gronk, Mixon, and Falcons D. Really sharp team overall, was able to make good plays overall, and then getting some leverage with guys who aren't as heavily owned. Hopkins, Lockett, Richardson were pretty contrarian in this Thunderdome, and overall just a great team. Ran away with the Thunderdome here. So that was the process. You can see I had a lot of Dalton here. I went Wentz across the industry as well. Had a good bit of Wilson in tournaments and was fortunate to have a winning weekend, but just a couple misses here and there that weren't quite enough to have an absolutely monster weekend. That went to Chipotle Addict and Papa Gates. They deserve it. If you want to review teams and tournament teams, I would highly recommend going through and looking at those teams. Those guys are on top of it and had a huge weekend. Congrats to Levitan for shipping the 3 donkeys. I was fortunate to win the Daily Fantasy Edge 4-man with a little different team, so happy about that, and excited to move on to Week 9 and continue the grind that we are having here in the middle of the DFS season. Basketball is in full swing now, NHL, obviously NFL we're moving to Week 9, so just trying to stay focused, want to keep grinding and make good decisions, and obviously want to help you guys as much as possible. So please give me feedback, and if there's anything I can do with reviews or model previews or periscopes or whatever, I want to hear from you guys what you think would be most helpful, because I want you guys to do well as we are in the grind of the DFS season. So again, I hope this review showed some insights into what the top pros are doing and what my process was. And I hope you guys had a good Week 8. As always, looking to see more of you guys at the top of the leaderboard. Good luck in the upcoming week.